We're always in conversation with the world around us, and the body is no different. There's been a tons of research that we won't get into in this conversation about the mind-body connection. So can we learn about ourselves through dialoguing with the body? And during times of rapid change, what can we do to support our bodies? Hi, I'm Stacey Ann Forrester, astrologer and mentor, and to help me unpack this topic, I'm here with yoga instructor and life coach, Hana Raftery. Welcome, Hana.
Hi, Stacey Ann. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy and excited to be here.
Me too. And Hana, you're an expert in bridging that mind-body emotional connection. And I thought this would just be a great conversation for us to have together. And so if you're ready, let's start with the first question. In what ways does the body speak to us? And how can we engage our bodies to understand ourselves better?
I love this question, Stacey Ann. So I think of sensation as the language of the body, right? So we have these 5 senses that most of us are pretty familiar with, right? Like what we see, hear, feel, smell, etc. And there's also there's actually 3 other sensory systems. There's the proprioceptive, the vestibular, which deal with like where is our body in space, and vestibular is like how we balance. And then the one I'm super interested in is the interoceptive system. So this is the sensory system of like what's happening inside of our bodies. So it gives us information like about our heart beating and about like if we're hungry or thirsty. And it also, the part that I'm most interested in is it gives us the language of our emotions, right? So it's like how our body, tells us if we're feeling fear or love or joy or pleasure. All of that is happening with this conversation through the senses. And we all process, so we all have the same sensory systems, right, but we all process things really differently. So the folks that I work with and that I am, all the people I work with are highly sensitive beings. So they're, yeah, you are. yeah. That's probably one of the reasons why I love you so much. So we all have these kind of different ways that we receive the language of the body through the senses. So some people are like, really like I'm one of these people. Like if there's like tags in my clothes, I get really itchy, whereas someone else might not register the tag. They might not even notice. Or some people are really sensitive to sounds. Like I told you before we hit recording, there's like a jackhammer outside, or like if someone's tapping. Whereas other people, they can focus with like, they need music to focus in the background, right? Or they really like white noise when they sleep. And just how we have kind of different processing abilities of those 5 senses. Also with the interoceptive system, some folks, like you might be one of these folks, Stacey Ann, since you named that you're sensitive. Some people respond to the sensory information that comes with emotions differently, right? So I, if my heart starts beating, I might, because I'm so sensitive to what's happening inside of my body, if my heart starts beating faster, I might register it as anxiety or excitement, where someone else might not actually notice that their heart started beating faster. And
for me, I definitely noticed the heartbeat. Like that is something that could throw me off. Like I can't concentrate if my heart is beating rapidly. But also I'm very sensitive to smells. And I don't like that, how some people love that new car smell. I don't, it makes me nauseous. So smell is one of those for me.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so what does that tell us about ourselves other than we're sensitive people?
Yeah. So, I mean, being a sensitive person, or having this kind of like, being a sensitive human, it comes with lots of challenges, of course, like burnout and, getting overstimulated, whether that be overstimulated by, emotions, or, when things are going on in the world, like as they always are, right? But if there's really heightened kind of collective emotion, people who are highly sensitive can burn out or get overstimulated, or even just with like a lot of visual stimuli, it can kind of tax our nervous systems in a different way than someone who processes differently. So there's those kinds of challenges. But also with this sensitivity, sensitive folks have such like this really deep capacity for care and for leadership when they're, fully resourced and like in communication with their body, and with kind of a deeper understanding of how they process the information from the world. And sensitive folks have this ability to experience life in such like an intimate way, right? Like we can really like see the beauty of a sunset, or like hear a song and like be brought to tears, or like read a poem and it's like heart bursting open. So it's, I think, one of the ways to kind of work with our body and our sensory processing preferences, or ways that we respond, is to really know like you have this capacity to experience life and to like be in communication with the world around us via the senses, and to understand like, yeah, there's burnout if we don't know how to respond. And like what we want, like why we would even want to do this, is so we can have more like pleasure and beauty in those moments of awe where we're like just laughing so hard, just in joy, or in like, sitting with a friend, like in their moments of grief and being really present. So
that's really helpful. And I secretly believe that we're all really sensitive in certain respects. And because we think that sensitivity needs to look a certain way, that we get distracted and we don't think, because if you had asked me maybe 10, 15 years ago, do you consider yourself sensitive? I would say no.
Right.
No, like I'm a tough person. Like I get through things. Like I think my judgment of what it meant to be someone who is very much connected to her internal processes was that somehow my judgment was like, that's weak, or they don't have their stuff together, or something like that. And so my brand of sensitivity is going to look different from another person's brand of sensitivity. And so, I secretly believe that that we all have, we're all sensitive in a certain way. Like,
absolutely.
What do you think? Yeah.
I'm so glad that you named that, Stacey, and because I would agree. And I see this like in myself and in the folks that I work with, of like, sometimes the most sensitive people are the ones that like come off with this like really kind of hard outer shell, because that's like a coping strategy to get through the world, right? Of like, and also like you said, right, kind of our kind of cultural conditioning about sensitivity as like a weakness or whatever, or like a that kind of lie that we've been told that in order, that sensitivity should look a certain way or shouldn't look a certain way, and that it means something about who we are, right? That I love that you said that it can look different ways, and I would agree. I think we all are sensitive when we're fully resourced and when we're, learning to connect to our bodies and that language of sensation versus kind of most of us are really conditioned to like be in our head and our mind and kind of process the world through thought only. And sometimes it takes like a retraining to get back into that communication with the body.
Now, Hana, you've used the word fully resourced a few times.
Yeah.
And I want to, like, what does that mean? What does that look like, being fully resourced?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think being fully resourced is different for everyone, right? It's being fully resourced is like the antidote to burnout. So for some folks, there's different ways that we can resource, right? Like we can have kind of external resources, right? Like support from family or financial resources or kind of doing things outside of ourselves. And there's also ways to kind of internally resource, right? By dropping into the body. And when I think of being fully resourced, or when I like feel into being fully resourced, it's the state where your senses are sensitive, right? Like where they have been desensitized, right? Where it's like they're kind of like fresh to receive information, and like that feeling of like waking up in the morning, kind of calm and alert and like ready to receive and respond, versus being burned out and overstimulated.
Yeah, it's, and balance is a state that we're always trying to achieve. And it sounds like being fully resourced has something to do with that state of like being in balance too. Do I have that right?
Yeah. I think of it like, I'm a new mom, so like I'm struggling right now with the term balance of like, is that a thing? Is that real? But I think like relationship, and you know this, but I'm a Libra, right? So everything feels like relationship, which is also balance, I guess, is sort of my word for that, of like, in terms of resource, like how can I like be in this relationship with my body and my senses where I'm like asking them what they need, to feel taken care of, right? Like just how I'd like be in relationship with like you as a friend or my daughter, of like, what do you need to be taken care of, and like what do I need, and kind of thinking about our bodies in that relational way as well. Like what do my senses need, and coming back to that like language piece of like, let me talk to them, let me feel this language of senses.
And like this brings me to my next question, about like the mechanics of speaking to your body. And I love your explanation about being in relationship. And relationships are hard.
Oh my God, they are.
They are. So being in relationship with our body can seem hard sometimes. And so, either from your personal experience or what you like to recommend to clients, like how do we begin to nurture that relationship with our bodies?
Such a good question. Something that I think can be really powerful, like you said, relationships can be hard, right? So just like any relationship, right? Like we're there for the good moments, like the kind of what we want is like the moments of like love and joy, like any relationship, like what we would name as quote unquote good, right? We can talk about polarity later, but like those are kind of what we're here for, what we want. So I think one of the best ways to enter into relationship with our body and with sensation is through beauty and through pleasure, because we don't want to go, at least I don't want to go like be in my body just so I can feel all my sadness and my anxiety. Like, I do know that in order to feel the full, the full range of being human, those are also present.
Yeah.
And it's not about avoidance. But I think a good starting point to get into this language, this kind of relationship with the body, is through pleasure and beauty. So pleasure doesn't have to be like a sexual thing, right? It can just be like, let me, pick up my mug and smell. Let me come into those five senses of, what do I smell? What do I feel? Is it warm? And what do I taste? Right.
Great.
And to come in a way that feels it. The beauty and pleasure, they like allow our nervous systems to soften. And then through that softening, we can kind of expand our window of tolerance, which is, the window of tolerance is like it's kind of what it sounds like. It's like, how much sensation can we tolerate while staying fully resourced, right? And like kind of without burning out or getting overstimulated. So once you use beauty and pleasure to grow that window of tolerance, then you're more able to sit with the grief and the anxiety and let it process through you, so you don't get like emotionally constipated, right?
Right.
And you keep like attuning to beauty and pleasure as this way of regulating and finding safety and comfort.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I thought we had to practice when it's not great to be in our body. And you just gave us permission to use the good feelings to start, and not expect ourselves to be present for the hard stuff too soon. And I love this idea of using beauty and pleasure to attune ourselves to our bodies, and that way we'll be more present for the not so great times, because that they do come up.
Right.
They do.
Right. I'm thinking about like kind of like my relationship with my husband, right? Like the beginning stages, it was all like dating and like fancy dinners and like gifts and beauty, right? And it's like, if we had just gone into the hard stuff, I'd be like, no thanks. I'm not
Bye.
and so now we can like, we still have these moments of beauty and pleasure, and we have, normal things that come up in a relationship, right? Like conflict and things like that. And so we've grown kind of like our window of tolerance. In that, I hadn't thought of it in kind of like a kind of dating, relational, that sort of intimacy frame.
Yeah.
It's so perfect. I love it. Of, how to be with all of that. And we get to, in true intimacy, right? Like with another person and with ourselves, we can tolerate all of that conflict and beauty. And it's not one or the other. But it's not, if you're just getting into your body to process your anxiety and your fear and your grief, like, why would you want to stay there? I wouldn't want to stay there. No, thanks.
Absolutely not. I love that. All right. So I want to move us in the direction of talking about change, because we're all in this period of immense change. And I think it's just going to get even more challenging, because we have a lot of things, both collectively and internally, that needs to change. I do believe that. And as the world is changing so rapidly, and the way we approach life has to evolve. And I think that our nervous system gets activated, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, the question is like, what do we do for the body, you know, to support change? And I'm reminded of one of my spiritual teachers like to say that because of the density of the body, it's the slowest aspect of self to change. Our mind or emotions, they could change pretty quickly because they're not as dense. But the body, it's the last frontier when it comes to adapting. So I would love your perspective of like, what can we do now as we're all experiencing a lot of change in our personal lives?
That's such an interesting question and important.
Yeah.
Right. Important for right now. It's, yeah. I'm just feeling into kind of what I want to say here. I think, and I guess just to kind of go back to the relational frame of kind of transition, right? Like if we're thinking about really any transition, like I'm thinking just to kind of put it more practically, I have a 1-year-old, right? So I just had this really big transition in my personal life of becoming a mother, right? And there were physical changes, emotional, spiritual, mental, kind of external changes, internal changes, all of it. And transition can bring up a lot. Change can bring up a lot of new stuff and old stuff. So I think, I think part of it is just like knowing that this is a time to really be present and to slow down. Just to like be aware that this is something that's coming, that's happening, right? Change is always happening. And a lot of us try to rush through the change, right? Or like pretend it's not happening. Or like we want it to happen faster, right? So we can either like kind of knowing your relationship to the change that's happening, right? Like as do I want it to happen faster than it is, or am I pretending that it's not?
Yeah, just get me through the other side of that
right,
change, right?
Right.
Not the middle. I don't want to be in the middle. Right. I want to be in the other side of change. Yeah.
Right. And to use that like relational frame of like what's going on, how are you to your body or to, you know, the people that you're around, and like what do you need to be resourced? So that word again, resourced, right? Of like it's more of a conversation, right? Like in terms of when I was postpartum, when I was entering into this conversation with my body, what do you need right now to be fully resourced? Sometimes it was a bath, sometimes it was a hug, sometimes it was like I need to cry, sometimes I need, you know, to eat some bread or whatever. Right? So it's more about that, like, can I slow down enough to be in relationship with the change and kind of all of the parties, including my own body, that are experiencing the change.
Yeah. So funny. What comes to mind as you were just sharing is, you know, when you're a little kid and you're moving.
Yeah.
But as a little kid, I'm going to speak for myself because when I didn't move a lot, but I remember my big move from my country of origin, which is Jamaica, and we immigrated here when I was 4 years old. But I don't remember anyone ever having a conversation with me that we're about to make this huge transition. And that would have been so helpful. So it's almost like, you know, being in that conversation with your body and just naming what's happening, and let them know it's going to be okay, but also don't forget that you're just take your body with you, but as you're going through it, talk to them, be in conversation. And I think this is what parents, I'm not a parent, so, but I think this is what you do is when you're going through transitions is you get the child used to the transition before it happens. You actually speak to them and let them
Right.
know what's about to happen. So there's less anxiety and fear.
Right. I love that, right? Like even in those, yeah, I guess in terms of the kind of the parenting example, I like that you brought that up about the move, right? Like those big transitions. And we can totally do it with ourselves or our kids or whatever in little transitions. I'm just thinking about like when I transitioned from, working to like, okay, I finished my work. Now I'm going to go like have dinner, of just like slowing that down and being like, okay, body, how was that work day? Like, are you holding all the stress of that phone call you just had? Are you still like locked up in your shoulders from sitting at the computer all day? Like, how are you as we make this transition? What do you need to feel resourced? Maybe you need a deep breath or a glass of water. Like, yeah, that relational, conversational
So
piece.
important.
And this, yeah, the slowness. Just
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah, and so
yeah.
easy we forget.
Yeah.
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 So, to close out this conversation, Hana, I would love it if you could lead us into a brief meditation to kind of experience that connection with our body.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So find a comfortable seat if you can, or wherever you are, just pause. If it's safe to close your eyes, if you're not driving or in the middle of something, you can close your eyes. And in this short meditation, we're going to attune to beauty and pleasure as a way of regulating our nervous systems and finding safety in the body. So just start with a really slow inhale into your belly and your back. And then exhale through your mouth or your nose. Inhale, breathing into your chest and your upper back. And exhale. Inhale, expand into the sides of your body, the sides of the ribs, sides of the waist. And exhale. And with your visual system, either you can open your eyes or you can just internally vision. Find something beautiful. So maybe you look out your window and notice kind of how the light is hitting the leaves on the tree outside. So find something beautiful and pleasurable with your vision. And then tune into what you hear. And notice something that's beautiful or pleasurable. I hear a little bird chirping. If you have anything to drink, if you have some tea or something, you can take a sip and notice the taste, or just feeling any taste that's in your mouth now. And noticing what you smell. So if you have some flowers or your tea or something, you can smell it and finding that beauty and pleasure in smell, or if you have lotion or something yummy and luxurious and delicious. Ooh, got a spray. And then notice what you feel. So if you feel anything pleasurable in your body, or you can just like take your arm and kind of stroke your skin in a way that feels good. Or yeah, putting your hand on your heart. And then that interoceptive system, so that kind of internal sensory space, you can tap in to a feeling of beauty and pleasure, and just noticing that frequency of pleasure in your system, in your nervous system. Go ahead and take a deep breath in. Big breath out. If your eyes are closed, go ahead and reopen them. Just remember, you can reattune to beauty and pleasure, even just for a second, and it can change your whole experience.
Thank you so much, Hana. And how could folks connect with you to learn more about your work and how you could support them?
Thank you for having me, Stacey Ann. It's really nice to be here. So folks can find me at my website is probably the best place to find me, and I think we'll link it.
Yes.
It's hanaraftery.com, my first and last name. And I have a membership called Sensing Shakti, where I work with folks who are sensitive beings on healing from burnout and really tapping into the power of sensitivity and stepping into that leadership that comes from a place of deep care and attunement to self and others. So I'd love to meet your listeners.
Thanks again.
Thank you for having me, Stacey Ann.
Bye-bye.
Bye.